Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking on a really challenging figure, Carl Panzram. He's often described as, well, maybe the most extreme and certainly one of the most articulate expressions of pure hatred, of misanthropy in American crime history.
Absolutely. And what makes this deep dive possible and so chilling is that we have his own words to go on. We're talking about the Panzram Papers. It's this incredible 40,000-word document he wrote. Part confession, sure, but also it's like this cold philosophical justification for everything he did.
Right, it's not just a list of crimes, it's his worldview laid bare.
Exactly, and that's where you hit this central contradiction with Panzram. He never, shied away from what he did. He fully embraced being a monster, but, and this is key, he argued fiercely that he was a monster created by society, by the institutions that were supposed to help him. You know his famous line, "I hate the whole damn human race, including myself." That really sums it up.
Okay, so that's our mission here then.
Yeah.
We need to trace that path. How does someone go from a neglected kid to this self-aware predator?
Yeah.
And really analyze, using his own words and the records, how these systems, these institutions, didn't just fail him, but actually maybe gave him the tools for his ideology of vengeance.
Well, let's start at the beginning, the genesis of it all. Panzram was born 1891, Minnesota. His parents were poor immigrants, East Prussian. And his childhood, by all accounts, including his own, was just grinding poverty mixed with really severe discipline, punitive discipline. We're talking about him being chained up, starved, even as a really young child.
Wow, chained and starved. That's intense. And it sounds like that alienation started almost immediately. He himself said other kids disliked him and that he already saw himself as a liar and a thief by age 5. Then his father just leaves.
Yeah.
When he's 7 or 8.
Yep.
Paternal abandonment right on top of everything else. Just left this massive void of neglect, really. And predictably, the delinquency didn't take long to surface. Age 12, 1903, he gets caught for burglary. He stole cakes, apples, and a revolver. Kind of ominous, that last one.
A revolver at 12.
Okay.
And that landed him where?
That landed him at the Minnesota State Training School at Red Wing. And in Panzram's telling, Red Wing wasn't a school, it was the furnace where his hatred was forged.
Right. The Panzram Papers paint a picture of Red Wing as just systematic horror, not reform at all.
Oh, absolutely. He detailed routine abuse, torture, and rape. Systematic sexual violence by the staff members. The conditions were apparently so bad the boys had this grim nickname for one of the workshops. They called it the paint shop.
The paint shop? Why?
Because, he said, they'd leave it painted with their own blood.
That's deeply disturbing. So,
Correct.
forget reform. How did Panzram see this experience? What did he learn there? He was very clear about that. He said, quote, "I was reformed, all right." But then he clarifies, "I had been taught by Christians how to be a hypocrite, and I had learned more about stealing, lying, hating, burning, and killing." He specifically says he learned about sexual violence from the people abusing him. So the lesson he took was, the world is about power, hypocrisy, and hurting others.
And it seems like the world immediately confirmed that lesson for him as soon as he got out.
Pretty much instantly. He's paroled in 1906. He's maybe 14, 15 years old. Weeks later, he tries to murder a Lutheran cleric. When that fails, he just hits the road, becomes transient. And then the final straw, maybe, was being gang raped by some homeless men.
Yeah.
He wrote that it left him a sadder, sicker, but wiser boy.
Wiser, meaning what?
The wisdom was brutal. Be the predator or be the prey. That was the choice he saw, and he chose.
And that choice fuels his entire adult life, right? This endless cycle.
Yeah.
Prison, escape, crime, repeat,
Uh,
all over the world.
Yeah, and his early adult crimes really show this targeted anger at authority. He fakes his age, joins the army at 15, gets caught for larceny almost immediately, sent to the military prison at Fort Leavenworth. That experience just cemented his hatred, convinced him all authority was corrupt and cruel.
And you see that directly in his actions after he escapes again,
Right.
Like the arson attack.
Exactly. Around 1907, after getting out of reform school, he goes on this spree, and he specifically targets churches to burn down.
Huh.
It wasn't just random vandalism. It feels like a very deliberate act against the religious hypocrisy he linked to his abusers back at Red Wing.
Okay, so he's got this pattern of targeting symbols of authority, of hypocrisy. That brings us to probably his most audacious crime, the Taft burglary in 1920. How did that fit his pattern?
Oh, the Taft burglary is pure Panzram. It connects his personal grievance right to the very top. He deliberately breaks into the Connecticut home of William Howard Taft, former president. Why Taft? Because Taft had been Secretary of War when Panzram was suffering abuse in that military prison at Leavenworth. Panzram held him personally responsible.
So it's direct revenge against the establishment embodied by Taft.
Right.
What did he take? just valuables.
He took jewelry, yes, and bonds. But the key item, the thing that became so important afterwards, was Taft's personal sidearm, a Colt M1911.45 pistol.
Taft's own gun. And that gun plays a role in what comes next, which is maybe the most horrifying escalation.
Right. He uses the money from the burglary to buy a yacht, the Akiska, in New York. And then, according to his confession, he uses this yacht to lure sailors. He claimed he picked up 10 different men, raped them, murdered them using Taft's stolen pistol, and then just dumped their bodies in the ocean.
Using Taft's gun, it's like this grotesque symbolic theater of revenge.
Yeah.
Using the establishment's weapon against its own people.
Precisely. If true, it's the ultimate act of contempt.
And his career wasn't just limited to the U.S., was it? He took this campaign global.
He really did. He ended up in Portuguese Angola, working for Sinclair Oil as a foreman, and there he confessed to just appalling brutality, murdering a local boy, then hiring 6 local guys for his boat crew, shooting all of them, dismembering them, and feeding them to crocodiles. And just to top it off, before he left, he burned down the entire oil rig he was supervising. Pure destruction.
Scorched earth everywhere he went. All this violence, this rage, it eventually leads to him writing it all down.
Yeah.
Right. The Panzram papers themselves, how did that even happen? He's in a D.C. jail in 1928.
Yeah, the creation of the manuscript is one of the strangest parts of the story. It really hinges on this one prison guard, Henry Lesser. Lesser was young, only 26, very progressive for the time. He saw Panzram getting brutally beaten by other guards and felt some pity, some sense of injustice.
But Panzram wasn't exactly cooperative, was he? What changed? There was that story about the dollar bill.
That's the key. Lesser, kind of indirectly, had another guard slip Panzram a single dollar bill, just a small gesture. But Panzram later wrote it was the first act of genuine, acceptable kindness he'd ever received from anyone in authority, ever. And that single act, somehow, unlocked his willingness to tell his story to Lesser.
Wow. So you get this bizarre dynamic. Panzram, the ultimate narcissist, finally finds someone to record his saga of hate.
And Lesser, the reformer, finds the ultimate subject to expose the failures of the prison system. It's like they both got something out of it. And Lesser took a huge risk, secretly smuggling out those 40,000 words, page by page, preserving this incredible, awful document.
And what was Panzram's main goal in writing it, do you think, beyond just venting?
His goal seems to be laying out his case,
Yeah.
providing this chillingly logical justification for why he was the way he was. His violence wasn't random madness in his view. It was the rational result of the violence done to him. Like he said, I have done as I was taught to do.
The scale of what he claims in the papers is just staggering, though. 21, maybe 23 murders, thousands of burglaries and arsons, over 1,000 rapes. It feels almost biblical in its scope, and his absolute lack of regret is legendary.
Oh, completely unrepentant, a true nihilist. That famous quote about regrets really captures it, doesn't it? I am sorry for only 2 things. I am sorry that I have mistreated some few animals in my lifetime, and I am sorry that I am unable to murder the whole damned human race. That's pure Panzram.
Yeah, that quote. But it does bring up a crucial question about the papers. How much can we actually believe? You mentioned corroboration earlier.
Right. That's the big caveat. Despite the detail, investigators could only ever solidly confirm about 5 of the murders he claimed. Maybe.
So was he just confessing everything? Or was he consciously building his own dark legend? Significant training.
I think it's almost certainly, at least partly, a performance, a calculated construction of his persona. Whether he killed 10 people or 23 or raped 500 or 1,000, the scale of the claim served his purpose. It made him larger than life, an undeniable product of a system he despised. The exact numbers were maybe less important than the sheer weight of the evil he embodied to make his philosophical point.
And that point, that performance, continued right into his final incarceration, didn't it? He ends up back in Leavenworth in 1929.
Right, after confessing to killing 3 young boys recently. He gets 25 years. But he walks into Leavenworth, looks at the warden, and basically says, just so you know, I'll kill the first man who bothers me.
And he wasn't bluffing.
Not at all. Less than 5 months later, February 1929, he ambushes Robert G. Warnke. Warnke was the civilian laundry foreman. Panzram just crushed his skull with a heavy iron bar, killed him instantly.
And the chilling part here is the why. It wasn't just random prison violence. It seems incredibly strategic.
Absolutely strategic. Warnke was a civilian employee, not another inmate. Killing him guaranteed a federal capital murder charge. Panzram already had 25 years. By doing this, he basically forced the government's hand. He engineered his own death sentence. He wanted out on his terms.
He literally weaponized the justice system to get himself executed. That's something else.
It is. And the system played along, in a way. They brought in Dr. Carl Menninger, a very famous psychologist at the time, to evaluate him. And Menninger's conclusion, Panzram was completely legally sane, sound mind, which meant the execution could proceed. He wasn't crazy, he was rational, and chose evil.
And he didn't just passively accept death. He demanded it, right? He fought against people trying to save him.
Oh, vehemently. Abolitionist groups were trying to get his sentence commuted, and he wrote them these incredibly vitriolic letters. That infamous line sums up his attitude. I wish you all had one neck and that I had my hands on it. Just pure contempt.
Wow. And that defiance carried right through to the very end.
Yeah.
The execution itself.
September 5, 1930. At the gallows in Leavenworth. He refused a priest, naturally, and then right as they're putting the noose around his neck, he apparently spits right in the executioner's face and delivers his last words. Hurry up, you Hoosier bastard. I could kill 10 men while you're fooling around.
Unbelievable. That final act just perfectly encapsulates him, doesn't it? When you put it all together, the psychological profile seems clear.
Textbook, really. Severe psychopathy, zero empathy, massive grandiosity. Remember, he claimed he walked the same path as God, and absolutely no remorse, none.
So looking back at his whole life, this nature versus nurture question, where do you land with Panzram?
I think Panzram is maybe the ultimate terrifying example of what some call a malignant synergy. You have the nurture part, the horrific, relentless abuse and institutional trauma, that's undeniable. But you also have hints, even in his own accounts of early childhood, of these really strong antisocial traits, maybe the nature component. The abuse didn't just damage him, it seemed to pour gasoline on an existing fire. It took whatever darkness was there and amplified it, twisted it into this unique, philosophically driven predator whose enemy was literally everyone.
So the legacy isn't just the crimes, it's the Panzram papers themselves, acting as this monument.
Exactly. A monument to how badly things can go wrong. How systems meant to reform can actually manufacture the very thing they claim to fight. He stands as the stark warning.
And what makes him so enduringly disturbing, perhaps, is that he wasn't dismissed as simply insane.
Right. He was rational. He built this coherent, if horrifying, philosophical framework for total evil. He chose his path, owned it, and went out proclaiming victory over the very society he claimed created him.
Which brings us, I suppose, to the final, really uncomfortable thought Panzram leaves us with. It's a question that kind of hangs over his entire story. You read about his life, the sheer unrelenting brutality he faced from childhood onwards, and you have to ask yourself, honestly, if you had lived that life, if you had endured that, faced that injustice, could you have turned out any different?
It's a deeply unsettling question.
Definitely something to think about. We'll leave it there for this deep dive.